Hi everyone, it's Arron with Colorado Weekend Adventures, and I'm actually here in Breckenridge taking you on the off-beaten trail that not a lot of people know about, and if you do know about it, great, but come along with me on my adventure today. So at this museum, it's absolutely free here in Breckenridge, but there are a lot of stuff for children to do. So it like shows you, let me show you. It says what's now, and it says a bar in 1940s. It says it's still a bar, so we'll check that out. It's on 103rd North Main Street. And then Brown Hotel is now a restaurant. Ooh, fun. And just interesting facts, but they do have a lot of interactive things for the children. Let's see. It says press. Okay, lift the handset. I'll put you guys there. And I think it's broken. The post office to pies. Gold Rush. So if you haven't checked out my Idaho Springs blog, we did do some gold panning and stuff, but every town in the mountains usually did gold panning, so you know, we're gonna get a little bit of overlap, but it's so cool to come and see these things. So that's a huge one. Let's go check out the children's office. Oh my gosh, how cute is this? Interactive for kids.
Oh dude, I would totally bring my kids up here.
And they even have a little dress up for them. Let's see. I look like Bunny.
You should put them.
Have a dressing room so they can get in traditional clothes and stuff like that. They also have a lot of interactive stuff, so like the mining phones and just, you know, stuff like old keys and stuff. So this would be very interesting for kids. Even a weight, so they can come in and measure stuff, which is really fun for kids. Oh, look at the old dressers. So cool. So I guess Breckenridge had a Navy.
It's Summit County, Colorado. In my book, it rates high above all the rest.
All right, Barney Ford. Barney Ford was born in 1822, and he was the son of a plantation owner, white, and a black slave mother. And when he was very, very young, his father died, and he never claimed Barney. So Barney had no last name. Barney was a nameless child, which was very common with slaves in those days. And so he actually ended up spending a lot of his youth in South Carolina because his father's wife took the plantation operation and moved it from Virginia, where Barney was born, down to South Carolina, where she had property, family property. She was wealthy, and so she wanted to be back with her own family down in South Carolina. So that's where Barney grew up. She wanted Barney to learn to read and write, and for a slave that was hard because it was against the law for them to learn to read and write. And so what she did was she went into the plantation house and she stole a big dictionary just like this one. And she found another slave on the plantation who actually could read and write, and she hired him to teach Barney. And Barney was a quick study, and it didn't take long for him to be able to read and to be able to figure out that it was fun. It was fun to read, and you could learn all kinds of things from reading that you wouldn't be able to learn any other way. So Barney was, I would call him a brilliant, really, a brilliant person. Later in life, he taught himself mathematics. And we're not just talking adding and subtracting, we're talking higher math. He was, he had a photographic memory. He was proud of Barney, and she thought, all right, now he's learned to read and write. I think maybe now we could take the chance and we could try to escape this plantation life. And so she had heard about the Underground Railroad and that there was a connection with the Underground Railroad not far from the plantation. And so in the process of trying to make the connection, she had to cross a river, and she started walking into the water, and the current was swift, and she couldn't swim, and she got out in the middle of the river, and she was washed away. So Barney, he was a young teenager, became an orphan, and remained a slave for until he was in his 20s. Had lots of different masters, learned lots of different skills, a lot of skills that helped him in his later life. And the first thing he did was, as a slave, was to go down to the gold fields down in Georgia, where there was a big gold rush in the 1830s. I know it's hard to believe, but it's true. There was a gold rush in Georgia, and a lot of gold was discovered down there. And Barney loved being a miner down there, even though he was a slave. He worked on river boats. He picked cotton, he baled cotton, but his last job as a slave, he was in his 20s, and he went to work on a big paddle wheel boat that carried passengers, like a cruise ship. And he really enjoyed this job because he was learning to cook and learning to be a steward to the passengers, learning how to set a beautiful table. He liked it. And he, at the same time that he was doing this work, he met a man on the ship that was an actor who acted on the ship. And this man took Barney under his wing, and he said, "Barney, I've gotten to know you, and you're too smart to be a slave for the rest of your life. Even though this particular job you're doing is not so, it's pretty palatable. But who knows who your next master will be and where you're going to end up the next time you're sold." So he said, "I would like to help you escape." And Barney kind of balked and said, "I really like this where I am, and I've met all these rich people and they're smart and I can talk to them, because he was a great conversationalist. And this man said, no, Barney, we're going to have you escape and you are going to go up to Chicago. The boat had moored in Quincy, Illinois, on the shores of Quincy, Illinois, on the Mississippi. And that's where the gangplank went down. And it was a free state. Illinois was a free state. Across the river, Missouri, that was a slave state. So this was a good place. If Barney was going to escape, this would have been a very good place for him. So the man said, all right, here's the plan. I've got a big trunk down in my room in the hold. And he said, in that trunk I've got costumes. And he said, I've got a beautiful woman's costume, hat, dress, gloves, shoes. And he said, for a brief moment in time, I'm going to dress you up and you are going to be my wife. So that's exactly what he did. He dressed Barney as a woman, and he said, I want you to put your arm through mine. We're going to walk down the gangplank. I'm giving you directions as to how to find your connection. And I'm going to give you a little kiss and say, have a nice day, dear. I'll see you later. And I'm going back up the gangplank, and you're going into the woods where you'll find this connection. And he did. That's exactly what happened. And so Barney found a man with a wagon full of hay, and he was hidden under the hay, and probably took a couple of days, because Quincy, Illinois is way south, and of course Chicago is way north in the state of Illinois. So he made it to Chicago, and now he is an escaped but free man. And in Chicago, he met Julia, who is pictured right here. And Julia was also mixed race. Her father was white, her mother was black, but no slave connection. They owned a farm in Indiana, and they had sent Julia to Chicago to learn to be a teacher. But she met Barney, and they fell in love, but couldn't get married because Barney had no last name. His father had never claimed him. So they had to find a last name. And the way they found it was by walking through the train yard in Chicago, and there was a beautiful locomotive, and on the side it said Lancelot Ford, which was rather a nice sounding name, they thought, and they decided they would take it. So when they got married, now they could get married, they became Mr. and Mrs. Barney Lancelot Ford, Barney L. Ford. So the first thing they did, and this is Barney's modus operandi was failure breeds success, and determination is the name of the game. No matter how many times you fail, you pick yourself up and you start all over again. And chances are the next time you pick yourself up, you're probably going to succeed. Not to say that you might fail again, but failure, there's no, you never would lay down and die because of failure. You would always pick yourself up and hope to succeed the next time. So back to Chicago, where Barney became head of the Underground Railroad. And in the interim, they had 3 children. And then Barney, typical Barney, because he was full of energy, full of ideas, he said, all right, I've got an idea. I want to go out to Colorado and seek our fortune in gold out there, because this was the time when the Pikes Peak gold rush was starting. Actually, it had started, and 1858, 1859. So he came to Colorado, went to try to mine near Central City, and it was determined, it was discovered that he was half black. He lost the claim. So then he heard about Breckenridge, which opened, where mining started in August of 1859. And he came here, and he actually did find some gold. But it was discovered that he was half black, and his claim was taken away from him. And the sheriff was called, and he was sent packing. So this time he ended up in Denver. And of course Denver was a little, a little kind of a small town in those days. But this is where he ended up. He called for Julia and the children to join him, and he said, I've got another idea. Barney's always full of ideas. So Julia and the children came across country, joined him in Denver, and Barney said to Julia, I was just in Breckenridge, and I liked it, even though they didn't like me, but only because I wanted to buy. And he said, but we could come to Breckenridge, and we could open a boarding house. We have the skills to do that. And a boarding house for the miners is needed because a lot of miners are coming into the area. So that's what they did. A good idea, but bad timing. 1861. What happened in 1861?
Start of the Civil War.
Exactly. So the miners, most of the miners who were here, Union sympathizers, and they left. And the town kind of became a ghost town. So, a failure. No problem. Back to Denver. Got back to Denver, and Barney said, all right, I'm going to open a barber shop because I know how to cut hair. I learned to do that on the paddle wheel boat. Opened a barber shop, very successful, made some money. It burned down. No problem. All right, I have a friend because I cut his hair, and he is a wealthy banker. And I'm going to go to him and ask him if I can borrow some money because I'd like to open a barber shop and a restaurant and a saloon all in one. So he went to his friend and said, I need $9,000. This man had gotten to know Barney, and he liked Barney, and he trusted him, and he knew what kind of a personality Barney had, and that he would succeed. Even though he had failed, well, he hadn't failed, but, he had some bad luck. So he said, all right, I will give you the $9,000. I know you'll pay me back, and I'm assuming you're probably going to succeed. And that's what happened. And Barney did succeed. But Barney, being Barney, had another idea. The Union Pacific Railroad was coming through Cheyenne, Wyoming, and there would be a lot of people coming on the train. So he said, I'd like to go to Cheyenne. And I want to open a fancy restaurant in Cheyenne. So he did. And it did well initially, but typical in those days, it burned down. Back to Denver. All right, back to Denver. I made some money on the restaurant. So I think what I'd like to do is open a restaurant and a small hotel here in Denver. And he did. Very successful. Then he decided he'd try one more mining venture up in Idaho. Didn't work. Back to Denver. Big hotel. What this town, because by now Denver was quite a substantial town. I want a big fancy hotel to serve all the important people who are coming through here now on the train. So he opened the Inner Ocean very successfully, and it remained open for many years. Then he decided, this is so successful, I've got to go back to Cheyenne, and I'm going to open an Inner Ocean in Cheyenne. So he went back to Cheyenne, tried to open another Inner Ocean, number 2, and it failed. In the meantime, by this time, Barney is in his 60s. He's made a lot of money. And he and Julia were actually the 14th wealthiest people in the Colorado territories. And he got involved in civil rights because a lot of blacks had come back from the war and didn't know how, they were illiterate, and so he opened schools for them. And then he was actually elected, very hard to believe, but true, he was elected a legislator for the Colorado territories. And it was at the time when Colorado was trying to become a state. And so what he did of great importance was, as a legislator, he had gotten to know a lot of politicians because of his restaurant and hotel business in Denver. And he went to Washington and lobbied and said, we want Colorado to become a state. But he said it is so important that we allow, if it becomes a state, blacks are allowed to have the right to vote. And that's what happened. What year did Colorado become a state? It's the centennial state.
1876.
1876. Exactly.
Wow, it took that long?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. So in 1876, Colorado's a state. Blacks have the right to vote. Barney has made a name for himself, certainly. And Julia was assaulted in Denver, and it was very frightening. And they were kind of at the age where they're thinking about where they wanted to spend the rest of their lives, and they decided maybe not Denver. So where would they go? Well, they loved Breckenridge. And by this time, Breckenridge was a very established little, nice-sized Victorian town with quite a bit of wealth because of all the mining that had gone on. And it wasn't just gold here, it was also silver, and there was some lead and zinc too. And so Barney said, all right, I've got a plan. I'm going to Breckenridge, I'm going to open a restaurant, a nice restaurant. And then he said, maybe we could talk about building a house up here and spending the rest of our lives here. So he opened Ford's Chop House right in the corner of this property. And it was a very fine restaurant. You know, they served very fancy food, very successful. Then he and Julia talked to one of the local architects who was well known, and they built this house. And the plan was they would stay here the rest of their lives. They loved it. They were well accepted in town. He obviously was the first black businessman. He opened another restaurant. They didn't call him Barney. They called him Mr. Ford. And they would have been happy here. But Julia got sick. So where did they go? Back to Denver. And that's where they spent the rest of their lives. Now, what happened was 6 more families owned this property. And the last family to own it was a family by the name of Theobald. And they were, the first Mr. Theobald was a Colorado pioneer back in the 1880s. And this was his son and daughter-in-law and children that bought the house in 1946. And Mr. Theobald died, and the children all scattered. And old Mrs. Theobald didn't want to leave. So she was here from 1946 until 2002 when she died. And when her son Robin got the house, acquired the house because he lives in town, this is what the house looked like. It was all run down. It was all, you know, everything was overgrown. I'll show you that. And it was in great disrepair. So her son, Robin, said, I don't want the house to live in, but I would like to restore it to what it was like when Barney and Julia lived here, because Barney was one of Colorado's most important pioneers. So he went to the town, got some funding, also is independently wealthy, and they restored it to what it was like when Barney and Julia lived here. Now, thanks for stopping.
Thank you. Fascinating. This is fascinating.
Well, it's kind of, I mean, it was one of those slaves.
Yeah, that was quite common.
Yeah, very, very common. You know, you think about Thomas Jefferson. Oh, yes.
Have you heard of it?
Oh, yes, I have.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely beautiful.
Yes, yes,
It's
I
very
have heard of it.
beautiful.
I've never seen it, but,
It's a beautiful liberal arts college if you ever get the chance to visit.
and where is Sweetbriar?
So Sweetbriar is down 29 south. So it's no Lynchburg.
I know the name.
The name, yeah. So it's like about 3 minutes south.
Seven? Okay.
So this is where the restaurant is?
This is where the kitchen, where they built future owners after Arron and Julia.
This is really amazing. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So we're actually in the Barney Ford house here in Breckenridge, which honestly and truthfully you'll see previously the history and what amazing man this guy was and how he actually got Colorado to become a state through lobbying and stuff. Kind of like an unknown history for those people that don't live in Colorado. So very, very nice. Come check it out. I'm not going to show you everything, of course, because you need to come. So yeah, come check out the Barney Ford Museum, and we will keep on looking around. So that's the outhouse.
Is that the original?
That is the original outhouse right there. And then look at the house. Yes, there's an add-on, but look at that. And a big corner yard. And as our tour guide was telling us, actually, right where this yellow building is down on Main Street was the original restaurant, but it burned down, so there's being replaced.
The problem is we're not going to be able to get really good.
That's okay. Thank you. Oh no, look.
We haven't been doing this. Oh, nice. It's all scratched though.
Yeah, it's all scratched. So in Breckenridge, we get a free gondola ride, which we're going to take advantage of. So join us.
Join us.
the gondola ride, so hopefully you like this.
Sorry.
We're going down. Thanks for watching Colorado Weekend Adventures. Please check on the links below to look at our other vlogs. Check us out on Facebook at Colorado Weekend Adventures. Hit the like button and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and wait for the next weekend adventure.